Hello everyone, welcome back to not only a new video, but also a new style of video that I'm used to. Inspired by YouTubers like Dante Ravioli and Mitten Squad, I figured I'd try a new style of video for myself in the form of a challenge. With Mafia Definitive Edition being one of my favorite games, I figured a challenge video for it would be somewhat unique. Seeing as it's not a YouTube goldmine like many other games, it hasn't been oversaturated in that department like Fallout has been. I've been playing this game since its release, and with me being more than knowledgeable of the game's mechanics and gameplay, I felt if anyone was going to attempt a challenge in this game, it would probably be me. The challenge I decided to take on was not only a no guns challenge, but also a no weapons challenge in general. This challenge is fists only and that's that. Now, one thing to make note of is there are some parts of the game where gun usage is required, and there are also some parts of the game that are very simple and easy due to the lack of enemies or available weapons anyway in specific chapters. For those, I'll take note of when we reach the parts that hit those criteria. This isn't a is it possible to beat challenge video, seeing as I'm certain minus the required segments that it is possible. I already know this is going to be a difficult challenge, but I'm up for it and I hope you are too. Let's find out the answer to, how difficult is it to beat Mafia Definitive Edition as a boxer? Before we begin this challenge, I want to clarify the rules, just so you all know what I'm abiding by, and so you at home can have a guideline if you want to try this out yourself. The rules go as follows. No weapons, including melee, are allowed, fists only. Only exceptions being when no other reasonable alternative is given. Weapons are allowed to be used to damage property, like vehicles, but no one is allowed to be killed or harmed with any weapons of any kind, including firearms, melee, and throwables. Whenever the opportunity is given, it is a requirement to wear the boxing outfit, unlocked at the free ride mission Explosive Situation. Missions that include no melee combat and Offer You Can't Refuse and Running Man, missions that have easy ways to avoid all forms of combat, Omerta, or ones that have no combat whatsoever, Fair Play, can be skipped. And NPCs like Polly and Sam are allowed to shoot and kill enemy NPCs. I'll be playing on the normal difficulty, and I didn't know how much of a blessing this choice was until later. But we'll get into that when we get there. This challenge was incredibly difficult in some parts, but thankfully for some others, it was just about as difficult as the base game normally was. The first 3 chapters of the game, and Offer You Can't Refuse, Running Man, and Molotov Party, are just a breeze. Though I did clarify in the rules that you can skip those first 2 chapters, I personally didn't just because I like them. They're short and not really any combat that Tommy can really get involved in, so it went by very quickly. Molotov Party is again a very easy chapter to beat as well. There was really only one melee section, but that's easy to complete just by putting the bat away. Now, I have a glitch in my version of the game where I'm unable to complete this chapter. Polly just doesn't want to fucking move! Polly just sits still and I can't get past him. So, I'm just gonna have to go by memory here. I believe you can put the bat away, okay? If I cannot, well, shit. I'm sure I can put the bat away. And as clarified in the rules, I can use the Molotovs on the cars. This does not harm anybody else. This only harms the cars. As clarified in the rules, nobody got damaged here. Only the vehicles. So, I get away scot-free here. Ordinary Routine is a completely different story, though. Ordinary Routine starts off easy enough, going from business to business. That's fine. However, once you reach the motel, this is where we get our first taste of what the challenge is actually like. This was from my attempt trying to do this challenge on classic mode. As you guys can of course see, I made sure to remember to put on the boxer outfit because this is the very first chapter where you're allowed to do that. So, always got to keep that in mind. A couple times I tried to get around to the front by first shooting out the car. This is to make it that I don't have to do the whole chase at the end. Now, I will show what will happen if you have to do the chase, but we'll get to that in just one moment. First, I had to take down the guy with the knife, since he was charging at me after destroying the car. What I first tried to do was going the normal way. However, then there's a guy standing there with a gun. He will very quickly shoot me down, and he did it multiple times. After a couple attempts, I decided to discover something that I'd never tried out before. There is a second entrance to get into the motel, which I didn't know about. 1,000 hours in this game, and I'm still finding out new things. This is absolutely magical. Going through the motel does take a couple of attempts, especially on classic difficulty. On normal, it's not that difficult. It's actually pretty much a breeze, especially if you know exactly where everyone is, like I did. However, when we get to the actual chase, this is one of the more difficult parts of this, because it all depends on what you think is the right answer. There are 2 ways that you can take this, but there's really only one that I've seen that actually works. You can of course take out his car. By taking out his car, you want to deal with him and then 2 more thugs. This is the easiest way to do this, because you just take out one, you go hide away. Take out another, hide away. Take out another, hide away. You can actually do the chase normally, but it all depends on just complete RNG. If you drive ahead of him, stop in front of him, get out of your car, and stand in front of him, he can't go anywhere. He'll recognize that you're in front of him, and he won't run you over, he won't go anywhere. There will be the 2 other guys that have been following you, however, they don't really do anything. Eventually, they will throw a Molotov trying to kill you. However, this can damage the guy's car. This seems like this would be a win-win, because it would take out the car, and you could take out the guy. This is a lose-lose, because the game automatically registers that car being destroyed as the mission ending, because you're not supposed to destroy the car, you're just supposed to incapacitate him. One thing I did find out is that you can get inside the passenger side of his car if he stops. This doesn't really do anything because you can't take the car or anything like that, so you can't stop him normally. However, if you are lucky enough, he could drive at full speed into a few poles, which could break his car. Now, he did this twice for me, but he never broke the car. He always drives all the way back to Morella's bar after hitting a pole or 2. So the surprisingly good at driving hulk of a beast can only be defeated, at least consistently, by taking out his car at the very beginning. If any of you at home want to try out this challenge and try to prove me wrong there, please do so. Show me a video. I would love to update myself. Fair play, no issue. As mentioned before in the rules, you can skip that one. There was absolutely no combat in the entire chapter. It is just driving and driving. So it's just as hard as it normally is, but I'm very glad I didn't do this one on Classic. Sarah is also another very easy chapter, seeing as it never really changes from its actual base gameplay. Really, the only thing I did differently here was that I ended up using some of my speedrun techniques, where if you're walking forward and the timer shows up, when the timer hits 1, click escape, click it again, walk forward, click escape, click it again, etc. However, once you make it back over here, you do want to reload a checkpoint, because if you don't, you will have a couple problems. The main issues I see here is that Sarah still has the basket in her hand, and Tommy still walks just as slow as he would at the beginning of the mission, causing kind of a comical end to it after you defeat the giant man. So this mission overall didn't really change at all from the main game. The only thing that really changes is just that you can't pick up the wooden board, which I normally don't do anyways. Better Get Used To It is another fun one, seeing as this is one where the challenge comes back into full force. The mission starts off with Vincenzo offering me a bat to ruin my challenge, which I tell him to fuck off. I then decided to take my 1960s muscle car and this 1930s simulator and just run down to Chinatown. When arriving to fight Billy and Johnny's gang, I had to put away the bat and I had to fight them all with my fist. This part is not at all difficult, seeing as this part is expected to be a melee-only section. However, when you get to the actual firefight, this is where it gets a little more unique depending on what difficulty you play it on. On difficulties like Classic, this part is best to be done by letting Polly deal with things, shooting out the barrels, shooting out the guys, and even shooting down the giant light pole. This is just so you don't have to deal with a bunch of these guys, and you don't have to deal with them when you're actually running through the building, especially when you run into the shotgun man. On normal difficulty, however, you can kind of just run past them after Polly deals with a couple of them, even beforehand. Missions like Better Get Used To It are very, very forgiving when it comes to the checkpoint system, where they don't have a checkpoint system that's directly based on progress, but it's more based on where you are in the stage. So running past everything automatically gets you a checkpoint. We see this happen later, but this is the first one where it really makes a difference. So I ended up chasing down Billy and Johnny, partially on foot, and then Polly helps save the challenge by having it that we don't have to shoot them ourselves. Thank you, Polly. This is why you're my favorite character. The Same in the Center was the chapter that I thought was going to be the hardest until later on, but we'll get to that when we get to that. This chapter, for the most part, is actually pretty straightforward in the beginning. You go up to Michelle, you knock on the door, you threaten her. Thankfully, Tommy does not ruin this challenge right here, and then you go down to the manager. Obviously, I didn't want to shoot the manager, and going up to him and doing the interaction prompt would automatically shoot him in the face. So instead, what I did was that I punched the guy in front of him to make him pull out his gun, and then I beat him to death. Interestingly enough, this actually showed me a weird visual glitch, showing me, in the bottom left, it showed me the gun and also the brass knuckles. The brass knuckles were a weapon in the original game that ended up being cut out from this one. Overall, this is the easiest part about the Corleone Hotel. A little bit afterwards, when you're actually getting closer to the top floor, this is where it gets a little more frustrating. You see, right here, you have these 3 guys. In normal difficulty, you can run past them, but when I first tried this, I tried this out on Classic, and I nearly ripped out my hair. Running past these 3 guys can definitely be a pain in the ass, especially on such low health. When I was doing this in Classic, I did discover a small glitch, however, but I could be completely wrong. Earlier on, I picked up the med kit after you kill the manager. Once I did this, I went back upstairs, and once I got stuck here, I went back downstairs trying to see if I could find any other med kit that I may not know about. that's when I came across the same medkit, completely restocked. This could just be a glitch, or maybe I didn't get it this playthrough, but got it a different one, and maybe my mind is getting crossed, I'm not sure, but who knows, maybe I found the perfect glitch for this one section of the game. In normal difficulty, running past these guys is no problem. One thing I do regret though is that I forgot to kill the goddamn clown. I'll have to come back for him next time. This is when we get pushed to the rooftops. These parts aren't really that hard as well. Again, this is how I normally play the mission. I just run past through the rooftops. Really no trouble at all. The church fight, however, is the most difficult part of the chapter. You have so many people fighting you all at once, you have to kill every single one of them. You have guys throwing Molotovs at you, you have guys throwing the Tommy gun at you. It's incredibly difficult to do, especially if you don't know what you're doing. After a while, I did have to rework my strategy, and here's the strategy I went with. At the beginning of this section, I'd run past these first two guys, going through this door here. This will lead me directly to the medkit so I can heal myself if I need to. Run past here, kill the Tommy gun guy, kill the guy that comes out just after. And then, depends on which other side I go to, I kill one or two of the guys on either side. Once this is done, I go back down, I then kill Johnny, and then I kill the two guys. The same two guys I ended up leaving behind at the very beginning. At this part, it looks like all hope is lost. Looks like I'm about to die. I can't punch him, I'm too far away, and he could shoot me directly. I would only have to pull out my gun, but thankfully Sam comes in like a goddamn guardian angel and saves me. After this part, Sam and I run out, we get into the hearse, which doesn't work at first, and so then we get into a police car, and then we drive away all the way back to Salieri's bar. Or at least get stopped beforehand, then walk our way back. By far, the most difficult chapter of the game, and I'm sorry for the spoilers here before we get into it, is a trip to the country. This entire chapter is very, very difficult. After driving out to go see Polly in the very beginning, all hell breaks loose. Maybe I'm building it up a little bit too much. Maybe it's not gonna be that bad. And god damn it, Tommy, you ruined the challenge. You son of a bitch, you ruined the challenge. Okay, well, that's in the cutscene. Maybe we won't count it. Maybe we'll just ignore it. Well, after that, complete obliteration of this challenge, dealing with the shotgun guys, Tommy gun guys, pistol guys, and etc. isn't really that much of a challenge. It was a little bit of a challenge to actually think of how to deal with them, but all you really had to do was hide behind them or hide next to this area next to the truck. A little thing I want to acknowledge here, this game is supposed to take place in Chicago. I live in Illinois. It is cold as fuck in Illinois. This mission takes place February in Illinois at night in the rain. Tommy would be a fucking icicle right now. After getting past this segment, all you have to do is deal with a few other guys. This isn't really that difficult as well. Again, just run past them or knock out a few guys in private. The next section is a little bit more difficult. This is one very similar to Better Get Used to It, where you have to kind of let Polly and the two other guys deal with it. This definitely took me a decent amount of attempts, but this right here is when we get to the most dreaded part of the chapter, even before playing it. The barn fight. The barn fight was, in only a few words, undeniably infuriating. This was the hardest part of the entire game, because this was a lot like the church fight. The one main difference, though, is that you don't have anywhere else to go. The church fight, at least you have plenty of the church to run around in, you have plenty of areas to take cover. This, you only have about 2 areas you can actually take cover that are actually effective. I actually had to spend a decent amount of time remembering the patterns of the Border Patrol guys, and then I had to remember the patterns of the cops, seeing as there's no save point in between those. One of the other more difficult things about this fight, rather than the original church fight, is the fact that now you're not only protecting yourself, you're also protecting Sam. So you have to pay attention to him as well. If you are away from him for too long, and if the police or if the Border Patrol guys get to him, he is dead and the mission is done. One of the biggest things that kept me sane during this whole thing was I did get to see a couple fun little glitches here and there, and I did pull off some pretty cool moves. Eventually, after a little while, I was finally able to take care of this whole section, and I could finally breathe a sigh of relief. This is when we got to the truck section, which this is the very first actually gun-required section in the gameplay. This part plays as normal. Once this part is over, you drive down to the dock, and then you drive back home. So even though this chapter was absolutely agony, I'm just glad we finally get to see Sarah again. I always like seeing Sarah in this game. She is one of the biggest improvements from the original by far. It's nice to have it that after everything that happened with a trip to the country, we finally get to have a relaxing mission, being Omerta. This entire mission is just driving around. However, I did decide to fuck around a little bit. I decided to start screwing around with the script hook, wanted to fly around everywhere, killed myself by accident because I forgot to turn on God mode, and then I went over to Frank's house. Thankfully, the rest of the chapter is pretty simple. Just sneak around behind Frank, head to the airport, sneak around the airport so you don't trigger any fight, and thankfully time remembers that this is a fist-only challenge. Even though it was a very short mission, it was definitely a very nice palate cleanser from what came before. Visiting rich people was one that I thought was going to be really difficult, but turned out actually not to be. Really, it again plays out pretty similarly, however, you just have to kind of run past everything. Running past everybody and getting in the first car that you can, if you drive it a little more forward so it triggers the police, then driving back, Salvatore will eventually run out, and after a little bit, he will then get in the car. He did die a couple of times, but eventually he got in. The rest of the mission went perfectly smoothly, just drive down to his house on 6th and Maple. Great Deal was one that I thought was going to be harder than it actually was, but it also wasn't as easy as visiting rich people was. It was more like Better Get Used to It, where I had to let the other NPCs deal with most of it. Every now and then I could get involved, but mainly I had to hide behind pillars and then come out when my time was right. Making sure the truck stayed alive and all one life was the more difficult part, but thankfully whenever you die after reaching a checkpoint, the health does go back up a little bit, so it does make it easier to get through it. The one part of this chapter that I was really worried about actually was the ending, the actual following the truck section. Doing this section I thought was going to be really difficult, seeing as how much damage these other little cars do and the fact I can't really do any damage back to them. The only one I can actually trust is having Polly in the car. But what ended up happening was instead, I just pulled out my speedrunning techniques like I did before. I just blew right past everything, made it all the way down the street, took a left, and made it down to the warehouse and just waited for Sam to arrive. Thankfully, by doing this, the other cars didn't really register me as being there, so it didn't really register them as needing to fire. So thankfully, this mission ends off being way easier than I thought it was. Salut. After all these more than relaxing missions, then we get to the second hardest mission of the game, being Bon Appetit. Bon Appetit was one that I didn't think was going to be as hard until I remembered a few little key aspects about it. It's mainly the fact that everyone is so tightly intertwined with each other. You have the 4 guys in the front who are randomly placed, sort of. They always are in the same rough area, but their distance is random. Sometimes they're way farther, sometimes they're way closer. You always want them to be way farther just so you can take out a couple guys without really being noticed. After spending an hour on this one part of this mission, I spent about 49 to 55 minutes on the singular part of this one mission. I finally got past it, but this is when I realized that this chapter had 2 required gun usages. When you're taking down the ambushers, I was hoping that you'd only need to take down the 4 at the front. Sadly, I was wrong. You need to take down every single one. The 4 in the front, the 2 in the back, the couple guys who come in through the hallway and one guy comes in for the car, but also the guy on the balcony. You can't reach him any other way. You have to shoot him or you have to use a grenade. Later on in the mission, when we go to see Carlo, this is another required gun usage. I tried punching him, I tried beating him, I even used script hook to actually get ahead of him to see if I could beat him up that way. You can't. It is a gun-only section there. So this is the one chapter that has 2 required gun usages, no questions asked. Happy Birthday was another one that I thought was going to be really difficult, but it really wasn't. But again, it also had 1 required gun usage. But I did find a little interesting thing about it. If you use script hook, you can go down there and you can beat him to death. You can choke him out, you can beat him to death, etc. However, you can't really get down there by normal means. Even by using the little speedrunning technique by stopping the timer, you can't do it that way. For some reason, this is one of the chapters that's immune to that. So no matter what you try to do, you can't get down there, you can't punch him, you have to shoot him. I wish I could have done it any other way, but it's all you can do. The first time going through this, I actually did beat up Galati by going down to him, but when I redid it for the actual attempt, what I ended up doing was I forgot to unpause my recording, so I also had to redo You Lucky Bastard and Creme de la Creme. Thankfully, those ones weren't that hard, and we'll get to those in just one moment, but this was a pretty interesting one to find out some little techniques for, even if they're impractical. You Lucky Bastard was actually a very, very easy chapter. The opening really had no issues, and even when getting down to the restaurant, I was able to run past everything. So when doing the chase, very, very easy, just follow him as normal, or even go ahead of him like the speed run. And then when you make it down to the docks, this is the actual really easy part of this whole mission. When you make it down the docks, this is where the easiness of this chapter really shines for this challenge. The checkpoint system is incredibly forgiving here, just blasting by everything until I see that little yellow diamond show up in the corner. Later on in the chapter, you reach to this train area. You only have 4 guys to deal with, and they're not really that difficult. Once dealing with them, just pull the lever on the train so it goes smashing into the warehouse. Once that's done, it's actually best to die here, just so you can respawn with way more health and then run past everybody. Thankfully, God realizes this is a fists-only challenge and he stops Tommy from firing. Thankfully, this wasn't really that difficult of a chapter. It was actually much easier than I was expecting it to, but that's mainly because of the checkpoint system. This was a very nice refresher, especially seeing as the last 2 chapters we had 3 required gun usages. Creme de la Creme was about the same difficulty as usual, but there was one big checkpoint that did allow me to skip basically half the airport. After this part, however, this is when we make it to the plane scene. Now, one of the big things with this scene with the plane is that you have to take down both the engines by shooting them out. I personally make a huge difference between this segment and then the one from Ordinary Routine where we take out the guy's car, because taking out his car did not cause him harm. Taking down the plane caused Morello severe harm. Obviously, if you look at the guy in Ordinary Routine, he's perfectly fine until I go up to him and start beating the shit out of him. Morello, though, he's already on death's door by the time we arrive there. Thankfully, this chapter wasn't really that difficult, but of course, like a trip to the country, Tommy has to fuck it all up by shooting Morello in the cutscene. You know, if Tommy wanted to keep this challenge going as much as I want it to, maybe he should have just started beating Morello to death instead, physically.
Alright, Tom. I think you got him. Tom. You got him, Tom. Jesus Christ.
For this challenge, Election Campaign was essentially just a rehash of Happy Birthday. There wasn't really any issue at all whatsoever. In fact, even when we got to go see Turnbull, I wanted to see if I could kill him without the rifle, because you actually can. If you go down there, you can kill him, and no one really reacts to him dying. I have to admit, I did not test if the speedrunning technique of stopping the timer would work, so if there's someone out there that is determined enough to try that out, I would love to see if you guys could actually do that and make it all the way down there. Maybe I'll try that out after this video goes up, who knows. Thankfully, this gunshot here also marks off the last time where we have to make a manual gun usage for the rest of the game. After this segment, the rest of the chapter is basically the same. Run by the police, run out of the prison, and drive home. Just for relaxation is just about as difficult as it normally is. It's a stealth mission, and the only weapons you have are your fists, seeing as you're not allowed to fire any guns in this chapter. So even if you get spotted, it's basically just playing the normal game. Moonlighting was one that I had a little bit of worry about, but nothing too severe. Obviously, escaping the bank was a little bit difficult, seeing as Polly couldn't help, seeing as he was holding the giant bag of money. So escaping the bank in that first segment was a little bit difficult, but it wasn't too bad. Now we finally make it to the final chapter of the game, the death of Art. We started off by saying goodbye to Polly and going to say hello to Sam. This chapter again is very similar to Better Get Used to It and You Lucky Bastard, primarily because of the fact it is very nice with the checkpoints. It's very sweet with those. So, when I made it all the way up to go fight to Sam, I went back just to make sure if I missed anything, any other health kits that I could have healed myself with, ran by everybody else, went downstairs, waited until Sam stopped firing, and then beat him to death. As Sam lied down on the floor, I took a sigh of relief that this challenge was finally over. This was a very difficult one. It was a very fun one, but it was also a very difficult one. I love doing challenges like this, and god damn it, Tommy! In all seriousness though, this was a genuinely fun and challenging challenge. I love this game. Mafia Definitive Edition is just right underneath Saints Row 2 for me, as my favorite game of all time. But even then, Saints Row 2 is pretty much mainly up there for nostalgia. I'm definitely looking forward to trying out new challenges, whether they be also of Mafia or of other games. This was a very fun one to do, and before any of you ask, I doubt this will be possible for Mafia 2, seeing as with Mafia 2, the combat system is pretty similar but also pretty different, especially seeing as most of the combat you're usually involved in are major shootouts, where I doubt you'd be able to lead out one person away and then do it one by one. Maybe you could, I'm not saying you can't, but I doubt it. I would be pretty sure that this would be possible in Mafia 3, but don't expect a video like that anytime soon. That game is way too long for a challenge like this right after this one. I really hope you all enjoyed this video. This is a completely new style of video for me, so I'm still getting used to it. And if you guys want to, I urge you all to try this challenge out at home. This is a very, very fun one, very infuriating one at times, but it's a great test of skill. I have a few more videos coming up, mainly some commentaries, but possibly a couple more interviews. But we'll see if that happens when it happens. If I don't see you all tomorrow, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Yes, I know Windows isn't active. It should be active in the next video though, so stay tuned.